Villanova legend and Hall of Famer Brian Westbrook. And, Coach, we were talking a little bit with Brian, and Brian, one of 3 Walter Payton Award winners at Villanova.
Right.
And I think we're going to have an opportunity to pick up the first Walter Payton Award winner, and I hope that's Brian Finner. Brian, you on the line?
What up? How you guys doing?
What's up, big Brian? How you doing, man?
Good. I'm doing great. Good to talk to everybody.
Appreciate you joining us tonight. This is awesome to have you on. And, you know, Steve just mentioned the first of our 3 Walter Payton Award winners. We're the there's only 2 schools in the country that have 3 Walter Payton Award winners, and Brian Finneran was our first in 1997, his senior year, Brian Westbrook's freshman year. And the thing about that, now Brian, I'll let you, Finn, I'll call you Finn and you be West, so I don't get it screwed up, so you know which one I'm talking to. But Finn, I'll let you talk about it. You were the first ever wide receiver.
And only 2 all time.
There's only 2 still all time?
There's only 2 all time, 2 wide receivers all time to win the Walt, and Brian obviously was the first to do it.
So how excited were you to be the first wide receiver to win the Walter Payton Award?
That was sweet. It was really pretty special. And, you know, the guys on that football team were fantastic too, and let me. He couldn't double team me too much, because then Dahlman or Brad, my brother to hurt you, or Westbrook would come out of the back door and make you pay for it. So we had such a array of weapons, and then Chris Bowden delivering the ball like he did made it easy on me. So it was special. It really was. To go to New York City and receive that award with my family there and some of my teammates and coaching staff was as good as it gets. And that's a moment I'll never forget. I still have Walter Payton's bust sitting in my office, and look at it every now and then and kind of pat him on the head every once in a while. I remember that once upon a time I was a pretty good athlete.
Well, to have you and Brian on the same team, you were a senior, Brian Westbrook was a freshman, and I just asked Brian the question, I don't know if you were tuned in or not, but why Villanova? Why did he end up at Villanova? So I'm going to leave that question out for you as well, because, you know, you came from California, Santa Margarita High School. You just mentioned your brother Brad, your twin brother Brad. So why don't you share with everyone who's listening and watching today how you ended up at Villanova from the West Coast?
So Brad and I were decided during our senior year at Santa Margarita that we wanted to go to school together. And I had some lukewarm looks from Oregon and Oregon State, and they weren't really high on Brad at the time for whatever reason. And when Villanova came knocking in January of '94, I guess it was, we knew as a basketball school and a hell of an academic institution, and had some 1AA football that we might be able to play. So we took a visit there. We loved the people we met. There was a couple California kids in Bo Roth, and there was a defensive back named Barajas.
Yeah, Brian Barajas, yep, from Mater Dei.
Brian Barajas. We're both from Orange County, one from Mater Dei, one from Newport Harbor. So my dad was from Boston. It just kind of made sense, and it felt good when we were there, even though there was a freaking ice storm going on when I visit. But the people we met, the vibe we got from Dan Fiddler and yourself and Andy Talley and all the different guys, it was such a family environment. And then on top of all that, we knew we could play football at that level. And then the education we were going to get was what we were really looking for. And we just, after that trip, we looked Coach Talley across the desk and we told him, yep, sign us up.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. And your senior year and Brad's senior year, obviously, you got the opportunity to play with the guy who's sitting to my right now, Brian Westbrook. So why don't you talk a little bit about how it was to, you know, when Brian came in as a freshman and you've been there for a number of years, you know, how you felt about Brian in the program. And I'm going to leave it up to Brian Westbrook to talk about you after you respond.
All right, nice. So B West, everybody asked me when I went to Villanova who else played there, and we didn't really realize that Westbrook was such an integral part of that undefeated team that we had that regular season in '97. As a freshman, that dude must have won a minimum of 2 games for us. I mean, there's obviously a team game, but his kick returns, his punt returns, his kickoff returns, his ability to make people miss and score in clutch situations was as good as I'd ever seen. And this kid was just a freshman. And I don't remember him being super vocal when he was there. He just kind of worked hard and did his job, and it made him a kid that could play with us. And there was never an ego, there was never an attitude. He just seemed like he loved playing football, and to have a teammate like that, so skilled and so special as a freshman, was just great. And obviously, we know what Brian did in the NFL. I mean, he beat the Falcons multiple times as well, which hurts my feelings a lot.
Well, look at the NFL part in a minute, because he was also nicknamed the Giant Killer. We have some Giant fans here tonight, so we may touch base on that as well. But B. West, why don't you talk about coming in your freshman year to have a guy like Brian Finneran and, you know, some of the other upperclassmen, but obviously Brian's the one on the phone right now. What did you feel, or what did you learn from Brian Finneran and, you know, him as a player and as a student athlete at Villanova?
Well, you know, it's what's up, D? I couldn't have come into a better situation where we had a team that was already very good, but we had a bunch of seniors that were good. They were the captains of the team when they led. And part of leading is showing younger guys like myself what to do and how to do it. And Brian is one of those guys that, you know, he didn't really say a bunch to you, but when he said it, you're like, oh, all right, that's what I need to do. And he'll say, hey, you're doing this wrong, and that's not how we do it here. That's not the Villanova way. We had a bunch of guys that were teachers, a bunch of guys that understood that younger men, 17, 18 years old, needed role models and someone that could physically show them the ropes of college and the ropes of college football. And when I think about Brian, I continue to applaud him for his ability to be a professional, even in college. I mean, coming to work, he obviously was the best player in the country. There was no doubt about that. But coming to work every single day, and I literally watched him work on his craft every single day and watch him get better through the weeks of practice, and watch how he ramped up to play on a Saturday, and how he conducted business with other teammates and the quarterback, and how he interacted with the coaches. And, you know, more than anybody throughout my career, maybe Ike Reese in the NFL and a couple of different guys, Dawkins, but Brian shaped the type of player that I ended up being. The guy that's just said, listen, it's not about me, it's about this team. We want to go out there and work our butt off every single day, get better every single day, and then go out there on Sunday, Saturday, it'll be easy. This is what we worked on. And I saw, you know, it's different routes I remember Brian from doing. There was just like an over route, and so it's 20 yards. You shake the guy in the middle, and then he's wide. I mean, you know, Brian's 6'5", he's a big receiver. Wasn't blazing fast, but he was always open. You don't become the best player in college football from not being open. He was always open, and I saw him develop that in practice. Right. And to me, that's something that I love. That's something that I felt I could do. And during the course of my career, I would oftentimes think back that and say, you know, Finn, knee injury like myself, but he worked his tail off and got into it and made himself the best player that Villanova had ever had, especially at the receiver position. And I appreciate all that he has meant to my career, certainly from a leadership standpoint. It's meant the world to me. And so Brian Finneran, and I'll say this, when he won the Walter Payton Award, we all knew he was the best player in the country. We knew that. But when he won it, I also felt like I won it too. Right. And that's the type of, that wasn't about me and what I did. This was about what Brian felt in the community type of person that he was. He made all of us feel that we won as well. And I think that was special and something I never will forget. So I do appreciate that, Brian.
And he had, I think, 96 receptions that year.
Yeah, it was crazy.
For I don't even know how many yards and touchdowns anymore. Right. But, you know, most of our slot receivers this day and age, Finn, are, you know, high school running back type guys like Westbrook. Mm-hmm. You were a 6'5" slot receiver, so to have that type of target and going over the middle and doing the things you did was just phenomenal.
And you know, Coach, it's funny because when you watch the NFL now, it's about speed. It's about guys being as fast as you can. But then you see other guys like Adam Thielen. That's not a speed guy. He knows how to work the system. He understands defenses. Brian Finneran understands defenses. B, how many years you played? 12, 13 years?
Yeah, 12 years.
12 years. And you're talking about a guy, and I never want to downplay, he wasn't a star, but people, when you go down to Atlanta, you ask those receivers down there about Brian Finneran. Right. And they'll say, we respect him, he's professional, he made me a better player, he held me accountable. That's the type of guy that I grew up under. That's the type of guy that every team needs, a leader and a true captain, and Brian Finneran certainly is that guy, no doubt.
Okay, guys, we're going to take a quick break. Brian, we hope you can hold on for one more second. We appreciate it, and we'll be back right after this. It's Talking Villanova Football with head coach Mark Ferrante. Back with more after this on 610 ESPN. back to Talking Villanova Football with Mark Ferrante, and we're joined by the two Bryans, Brian Finneran and Brian Westbrook. And Coach, we talked a little bit about some of Brian's records. I want to go over Brian Finneran here. Single season most yards, 1,389. Most career receptions at 265, and career yards, 3,872. And also most receptions in a game. He hauled in 16 against UConn. I wonder if that was a 6 overtime game.
Wow. I don't think it was, actually.
No, it wasn't. It was before that. That was like an 89.
I think it was regular 4 quarters. I think it was regular 4 quarters. But, you know, B. Finn was mentioning how our team was so good in 97. And it's kind of crazy because in 96 we went to the playoffs. And then in 97 we thought we were going to have Clint Park back as our quarterback. And he ended up graduating. So that's when Chris Bowden, as you mentioned earlier, Finn, got his first start. And we were the only Division I team, whether FBS or FCS back then, 1A, 1AA. We were the only undefeated team in the regular season at 11-0.
That's right.
And Curtis Sifford, the year before, was the first ever 1,000-yard rusher in Villanova history. He eclipsed the 1,000-yard rush mark. He was another California guy, Finn. And Curtis was actually our starter in the beginning of 97 when B. West showed up. And then, as you mentioned on the previous segment, Finn, that Brian kind of eclipsed him a little bit. And throughout the playoff run and so on, B. West really became the starter before the year was over.
Curtis was a really good running back, fast, speed guy from Cali. Another guy, senior, that just leaders. I mean, it's hard. I don't know that people understand it, how these older upperclassmen, and I think coaches say it all the time, we need guys that's going to be leaders. Yeah, you need that, but I don't think people understand how important that is. And when I see guys like Sifford and Dobin and Brian and Brad, those types of guys, Freiberger, those Regis, those were the leaders on our team, and there was no messing around, there was no fooling around. And when you look at the teams that win, they always have those guys there all the time.
It's the chemistry.
That's right.
And it's what makes it work. And you mentioned Brian Finneran as that type of guy, and you know our captains were also Josh Dalbin and Derek Forgione.
That's right.
2 quiet guys. And as coaches, we never truly know who the true leaders of the program are. We really don't. We're not with you guys on campus. We're not with you in the dorms and so on. But Brian Finneran and your other buddy, Eddie Diaz, were guys that kind of kept the thing flowing behind the scenes. And, you know, that's awesome because you never know who those true leaders are. Hey, I looked this stuff up today. I'm going to talk to both of you. I'm going to have you both answer this one as well. The average NFL career is 3.3 seasons, okay? If you're on the active roster after you get drafted, if you're a rookie and you're on that team's active roster in the opening game, it pushes up to 6 years. So with that being said, the average running back's career is 2.5 years, and the average wide receiver is 2.8 years. So you guys played the 2 positions that have the
shortest
least longevity.
Wow.
Okay. Wow. So here's my question: how in the world, Brian Finneran, were you able to do 12 years, and then Brian Westbrook? I'll let you answer first, Finn, but then you, Brian Westbrook. How in the world were you able to play the position of running back for 9 years? Finn, go ahead.
If you ask Roddy White, he'll tell you I played 10 years because I spent 2 years in IR, but I remind him I got paid for those 2 years. I count them. So for me, it was bumpy to start, as you guys know. Right. Seattle got cut. I had to go to NFL Europe, came back and signed with the Eagles. Got cut after 5 weeks there, and then finally got down to Atlanta on the practice squad in December of '99, and then spent the next 11 seasons on their roster. And the only way I did that was just grinding. And my dad told me, even going to Villanova, that first training camp I was there, he's like, you ain't trying to make any friends until you make that football team and let them know you're a player. And I did that for my whole career. Every single year, somebody tried to come and take my job. Coach Ferrante was like, we drafted a receiver 2 or 3 years in a row. We brought in free agents to take my job as a third receiver. So I just kept grinding, and I believed in myself. I had good people around me. And the good thing about me, I was a big body receiver, 6'5", 215, so I could play special teams. So it gave me such a big leg up on all the other skinny, little, fast, quick receivers that didn't have a chance to bang inside on punt or punt return and kickoff coverage. And I was able to do that throughout my whole career, and it really kept me in the league. And you know what I did? I love playing football. And a lot of guys that play in the NFL don't love it. But I loved being on the field and being, as soon as I stepped on that field and I was in between those white lines, you better have the same jersey on as me, and I'm coming after you, and it's not going to get pretty. And I don't care if you get hurt. I don't care if I take you down. I don't care what happens. I'm trying to win a football game. I'm trying to have fun playing. And I'm trying to get after you and keep my career, find good security for my family and the kids and my wife and everything else. So, as you know, having kids at a young age at Villanova and early in my football career, that also something that really pushed me and gave me the drive to succeed. So those are some of the things that come to my mind when I think about playing as long as I did.
Right, and I remember you just mentioned, you were a free agent at first and then had to go to the Barcelona Dragons and tore it up over there. You were either the first or second leading receiver over in NFL Europe. And then you can't imagine how excited we were. Brian, you were still a student at Villanova, but how excited we were to have you picked up by the Eagles. And then as you just mentioned, I think you just said week 5, I'm still mad at Andy Reid about letting you go. But then, the best thing that could have ever happened to you was probably that, because you ended up with Atlanta right after that. And
it really was.
11 years later, you were still in the league.
Yeah, it's crazy. It was a bumpy road at first, and I didn't do myself any favors in my first game as an Eagle, but I wish I would have had another opportunity there to make something happen, and hopefully, it worked out. It really did, and I was fortunate to do it.
Now, I did hear one story, and I can't remember what year it was. You'll obviously remember better than I. I heard it was a contract year for you, and the Eagles were maybe looking to bring you back, but then Mora wouldn't let you go. Is there any truth to that rumor that was floating around campus?
It really is not a good story. It's good for me, but not good for the Eagles. So I was a free agent for the first time in my career, because before that I was a restricted free agent. And then I got a chance to go out there and test the market. And Andy Reid came back and wanted to sign me to a pretty good 4-year deal. And I went back to the Falcons and I said, hey, Andy Reid and the Eagles offered me a pretty good deal. Here's what it is. You guys want to match it? Because I'd love to stay in Atlanta. If you guys match it, then I'll stay. And the Falcons said they weren't going to match it. And I said, all right, thanks for all the time here. I'm going to Philadelphia. So I called my agent, said, call Philly, we're coming to Philly. And Coach Moore said to call him when someone went down. So I called Coach Moore, who was my head coach in Atlanta at the time. I said, Coach, thanks for everything, man. I'm heading up to Philly. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, did you sign anything yet? And I said, not yet, but my agent just called all those guys up there and told them I'm coming. And he's like, hold on. So he calls Arthur Blank, and he calls our GM at the time, and Rich McKay and everybody else, and they get a deal done and almost match exactly what Philly offered. And I literally had to tell my agent, call Philly and tell him never mind. It was a bad deal. My agent hasn't signed a kid in Philly in the 15 years since then. But he never will. I'm not happy with him.
You know what, though? I'm not as mad at Andy anymore because he was able to get you a bonus, so I'm happy about that.
That's right.
I'm happy about that.
Exactly right.
So B. West, 9 years as a running back. That's almost unheard of. What's the secret? What's the reason? How did it happen?
It's funny because similar to Brian, I don't think there is a secret. It's about how much you want it and what you're willing to do to make it happen. And I think me and Brian's story is similar in this way. Brian made himself, just that last story with Jim Moore down there, he made himself irreplaceable, where the team couldn't function the way that they wanted to without a guy like that. And so, and Brian was a third receiver, the glue that kept that special teams together. He was a core special teams guy, a guy that got it done on all different levels. And so for me, when I started my career, it was all about special teams. When I got there, I had Deuce, Buckhalter, Dorsey Levens, Brian Mitchell, and a bunch of guys that walked off the street in front of me. And so, for me, it was all about what could I do on special teams to make myself relevant to these coaches. And I just worked my butt off, similar to what Brian did. And then eventually you had a chance. And when you have an opportunity, especially in that league where you're going to be replaced every single year if they can, you have to make the most of your opportunities and hope that your coaches see it, see the guys around you see it. And, if you have to bounce around to other teams, you want to see it, you want other teams to see it as well. And, similar to B, it was a job. It was a headache every single day, but you had to be more hungry than the other guys, and that's what it was all about. And every day you're playing with a chip on your shoulder, because I didn't like the fact that I got drafted in the 3rd round. I thought I was better than a lot of the guys that went before me. And I went to the Senior Bowl with the best players in the country, worked my tail off all week long, and had the running back coach come to me 2 minutes before we're walking out of the tunnel and say, yeah, you're only going to play 3rd downs because none of the other coaches think you're good enough to play on regular downs. And I'm like, wow, this is an all-star game. Right. This is when everybody is supposed to showcase their talent. So they played Lamar Gordon. They played Jonathan Wells, O-State. And I played on special teams. That's it, in the all-star game. And I was a running back, not a punt returner. And, those are the things when I see Stump Mitchell across the field when he was with the Cardinals. Right. And he would want to talk to you before the game. No. I still got this chip on my shoulder. I still had that thing that there's a hatred towards anybody that doubted it. And I think those are the types of things that drive you, or at least drove me throughout my career.
Well, you mentioned your play on special teams. That's kind of how you got your nickname of the Giant Killer. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about that in the next segment.
Do we have to?
Yeah, we're going to, Steve. We're going to talk about some special team stuff when we get to the next segment. And then we got another great guest calling in. So, hey, B-Fin, looking forward to seeing you this weekend at homecoming against New Hampshire. Please tell Aaron and the kids we said hello, and really appreciate you joining us on the air tonight.
Yeah, enjoyed talking to both of you guys. Be West. I don't know if we're going to be up there for homecoming, but I'm excited to see everybody, Coach, and looking forward to it.
When are you coming in town?
Thursday.
Okay. So I'll see you the Thursday afternoon or Friday during the day. Stop in. Thanks on TV.
Okay, we'll be back with the Giant Killer, as Coach Ferrante likes to refer to. It's Talking Villanova Football with head coach Mark Ferrante. Back with more after this on 610 ESPN. Villanova football with head coach Mark Ferrante. And Coach, you were getting to talk a little bit about Brian Finneran, what a great career he had at Villanova. But the one thing that both Brians seem to talk about is that competitive streak, that competitiveness that all great athletes have. And I think that's what really separates the good ones from the great ones. And I'm sure you see that at every level, at a high school level, the college level, and for these guys, even the professional level.
It's the intangibles. It's the passion. It's the drive. It's the discipline. It's the dedication. It's all the things. Everyone has certain levels of talent, but it goes beyond that, and they definitely have that. And, real quick, before we get our next guest on the air, we talked about the special teams, and everyone remembers that punt return that Brian had when he was in the NFL against the Giants. The ball hit the ground. He scooped it up and went down the sideline. That was awesome. But, you mentioned on the opening segment, Steve, where Brian is the only collegiate player at any level to rush for 1,000 yards and receive for 1,000 yards in the same season. Well, he had over 800 yards in returns, kickoffs and punt returns as well. And the only reason he didn't go 1,000 is because as coaches, we took him off punt and kickoff return because we wanted to protect him.
Trying to save him
because he was too valuable in the rushing and receiving category. So otherwise, he'd have been the first ever and maybe only ever to have 1,000 in all three categories.
That would have been a cool stat. In retrospect, that would have been.
You had like 860 yards returning in that same season. So
I'm mad. I'm disappointed in you guys now.
Well, it's not 9:40, so we didn't pull you off that close. So, so our next guest, right?
Yeah, I'll let you introduce him, Coach.
We're really excited to have him here. You know, son of a Villanova football alumni, legendary Hall of Famer Howie Long, current Eagle. Great player.
Two-time Super Bowl champion.
Two-time Super Bowl champion on two different teams in back-to-back years, right? Chris Long. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. It's awesome to have you on here with Brian and I. And, you know, it's awesome. Just I want to thank you so much, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. It's great being on.
Now, you guys are getting ready to go overseas, right? So I'm sure you're busy getting ready, packing, and those types of things. And you guys, when are you leaving? When are you heading over there?
Yeah, we head over Thursday night for practice, so we get done with practice, you know, in that kind of 6 o'clock range, and then we head to the airport and go straight, and we try to catch some Z's on the way over, and we get up and we get to work. So, you know, we land. It's going to be, you know, 7 in the morning. So, yeah, it's the right time for a trip like this after a tough weekend, and certainly, you know, trying to get things right. It doesn't give you a lot of time to think about things or feel sorry for yourself. You got to get moving, and we got to go try to win a football game here. And you know, it should be interesting. And I think we got great coaching staff and the right kind of players to handle a trip like this. And hopefully, we just come back with a win.
Well, obviously, there's a lot of people sitting out here in front of us today that are huge Eagles fans, and you know they're definitely pulling for you to go over there and get going in that great direction that you're hoping to. And then I think, correct me if I'm wrong, do you have your bye week after this game coming up, so you'll be able to get off that jet lag a little bit?
And that makes it really important, you know, try to go in and not just to get the 500 going into the bye, you know, all things considered, still being in the thick of it, but to get that kind of positive momentum that we can create. You don't want to go into that week with a bad taste in your mouth. You want to go into that week after a win, and so, you know, we're going to have a 6-7 hour plane ride back right after the game. No matter what, you might as well make it a happy one.
Exactly right. Yeah, unfortunately, I know that feeling. We had our bye this past week, and the game prior to didn't go too well, so we had to sit on it for a little while, which I'm hoping makes our guys a little hungrier going into this week's game. I have a question for you, and it's something that, you know, when I've seen you before in person, along with your brother Kyle, who's with the Bears, and then obviously your dad when he's been on campus for certain events and so on. And I'm hoping you can help me with our guys up front, right? So give me 1 or 2 or 3, whatever the key points are to be a great pass rushing defensive lineman. And if you can impart some wisdom there, I want to share that with our guys.
I can tell you how to be a good one. I don't know about it. I think I was great for a few years, I'd say, and now I'm just good. So I just, from watching guys that I played with, and I was lucky coming in the league, you know, playing with guys like James Hall, Leonard Little, Roy Glover, Fred Robbins, a lot of those guys having 60-plus sacks in the league. Leonard Little had, you know, 80-something. Roy Glover, I mean, he had 18 sacks in a season. 16 sacks in the season as an interior guy. You know, I think the key is learn your strengths and play to those strengths. I think a lot of times when you're learning technique, especially pass rush, there is an art form, and you might try to emulate somebody a little too much that doesn't work for you personally. So, like, Julius is my favorite player growing up. Me and Julius Peppers have nothing in common physically. So, you know, me studying Julius Peppers' tape, I can try to take 1 or 2 things from it, but I need to find comps that work for me. And once I realize what my strengths are, my weaknesses are, I try to play to those strengths as much as I can and avoid things that put me in a position where I'm not playing folks because they're so strong. So I think self-awareness is big. And no matter what kind of player you are, hand usage and timing are two of the biggest things. So I know that's kind of general, but I think being self-aware and realizing that the most important thing you can do is be good with your hands and practice your timing.
Right. I remember when I talked with your dad one time, and when I was coaching the offensive line here at Villanova, I had the opportunity to sit and chat with Anthony Munoz, who's one of the best ever O-linemen. And your dad, Munoz, talked exactly about what you just talked about, the importance of the hands and the placement of the hands and the timing of the hands. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I remember you and even Kyle, the one time I saw Kyle, I don't know how big he is. He's 6'9".
He's big as a grizzly bear.
he looks like a grizzly bear, right? But Chris, when you guys were back a couple years ago, we had a golf outing, and Joe Maycoid had you and your dad and Kyle and everyone was here, and Kyle started doing demos on me, right? And I'm like, Kyle,
I hope he punched you in the chest.
I don't
sure
think
he did.
I don't think it would have come out of my chest. He was punching my chest. So I'm like, Kyle, you don't need a demo on me. I get the importance of hands and all that. So I'm glad.
Imagine how I feel going up in that house.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. So why not share with our fans that are here tonight, and with myself and B West and Steve and everybody, how awesome is that to be back-to-back Super Bowl champ? How excited was it to win one here right in Philly with the fans that this place has, right? And why don't you share those emotions with us a little bit?
Absolutely. Everybody's career goes differently. It's a real journey. I'm lucky to be, in my 11th year there. You guys get to play that long. And so I've been truly blessed playing this game. And, a lot of ups and downs for me. Coming into St. Louis is a hot pick. And then the person that goes with that, and then kind of my career taking off. And playing where it was, it was a span there where I had 40-plus sacks in 4 years. And I was rolling. Team captain and whatnot, and then I get hurt. You get the injury bug here. I got IR 2 years in a row, and so I was really standing at the crossroads of my career, where certainly if I'd have hung it up, I think you'd understand injuries happen, and I've had a good career, but I want to take one more shot at it. So in my 9th year, I went to New England. Kind of played out of scheme, but made some good contributions to that team, and was really lucky to be a part of it. And took home that Super Bowl trophy with the guys, and we were a part of really a special game. Being down street, doing all of that, it was remarkable. But I just wanted to play someplace one more time that kind of fit, my scheme, fit what I do, and the Louisville 4-3 team when I was an age player. And so I looked at it. I saw a really great group of players and potential, but I didn't know that we'd go as far as we did. So I signed up here and was really just lucky to be a part of what I believe is one of the most special years in football history for any franchise. And then we talk about the awesome things we had in Philly. My favorite thing about playing for the Eagles is Philadelphia and the fans and the people out there, and to think someone waited so long to get that look at the ring. I was just so lucky to be a part of it. So everything last year, from the adversity we overcame to the playoff run, being underdogs the entire time, and to that parade, I absolutely love Philly, and I was very lucky to be here last year and lucky to be here this year. We got our obstacles now, but I really do believe the same team is kind of still in the building, and we just when these things go our way, we need to play better.
So sitting next to me, obviously, is Brian Westbrook, and his picture is hanging up in that facility in a few different places.
I see him every day.
And I'm sure you still have your dog mask from last year, so throw that on again and get that mentality back. But before we end your segment here, Chris, let's talk about what you have coming up in the upcoming weeks. Your Water Boys charity. You're going to have an event down in Philadelphia at Del Frisco's. Why don't you explain to everybody what that's all about? Maybe we can get some people that are here or that are listening to attend that event. I know B. West, Trey Thomas, a bunch of the guys from the Eagles organization were there last year. I know Villanova had had a great turnout last year. Joe Maycoy and the gang showed up really well, and some of our current players will be down there volunteering and working out for your event. So why don't you explain to everybody what your Water Boys is, what it stands for, before we end this segment?
Yeah, so a couple years back, I was able to kind of get out of my bubble and travel. I went to Tanzania and East Africa to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in the off-season with a teammate. Kind of a crazy thing doing the off-season. We did it. I came down and had just such a great experience, and also at the same time saw a scale of poverty I've never seen. We're so lucky in the States. I mean, we take certain things for granted. And one thing that we do take for granted, I learned, is clean water, drinking water. It's just such a nightmare in the third world as far as water scarcity and, waterborne illness. So, I mean, when you talk about half the world's hospital beds being occupied by people suffering from waterborne illness, think about the efficiency that we can improve our world with. And the lives we can save. I mean, kids are perpetually sick and dying over there. In Tanzania, some of the places we visit, some villages we work in, some schools we visit. So about 3-4 years later, and 49 large solar-powered wells later, funded, we've got over 150,000 people drinking from our sources, and it's just been a real joy recruiting other players to be a part of Water Boys, the organization, and leveraging their platform to try to save some lives and increase access to safe, clean drinking water in that region, and globally we're working to expand as well. So November 12th, we're going to do our second event here in Philly. The first one was awesome. Brian came by, a bunch of his guys came by, and it went great. And we're hoping to do it again with the help of y'all and Joe Maycoy, my guy. Blasting it out. Hopefully it'll be even better. But November 12th, 7 o'clock, and you can learn more at waterboys.org. But I just really appreciate how Philly's kind of, adopted not only my play on the field, but, my causes off the field that are so important to me. They show up, they raise money for their causes, and I'm just very grateful.
Well, Chris, obviously, thanks so much not only for doing that, but everything you've done. I know you've also given to the Philadelphia School District, and everywhere you've been, you've always given back. So congratulations on that, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. And have a safe trip overseas. Go get that victory so you can enjoy that bye week, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. We'll see you down at Del Frisco's on the 12th.
Thank you, guys. Look forward to seeing you on 12th, and we'll visit this one. The fans deserve it. They deserve better, and we'll get our ass and gear. So thank you, guys.
You got it, brother. And Joe and Kathy are here tonight, and they say hello.
Thanks so much.
Coach, we just got about a minute and a half left. We'll talk about a little bit about got New Hampshire coming in on Saturday. It's homecoming weekend. Just talk a bit about your preparation as you get ready for the Wildcats.
Well, I'd like to have this guy next to me.
Yeah, it would help, right?
Can we get Westbrook to suit up here?
From all those stats, he can't have any eligibility left.
That would be a good thing right now.
Would you be good for a full series, or would we have to sub you out a little bit?
Sub me in and out of that series. Hope he's a 3 and out.
Just put him as a decoy. Everyone want to go that way, just run him the other way.
Right. So, no, but seriously, anxious to get back on the field. As we mentioned in the earlier segment, we are getting healthier. The bye week definitely helped. We're hoping to have more of our full squad ready to go. New Hampshire's a good team. Sean McDonald up there has done a phenomenal job. They, are 1-6, but when you look at their record or you watch them on film, what you see on film is not indicative of what their record is. And to be honest with you, I don't think our 3-4 record is indicative of the team we can be when healthy. So it's going to be 2 teams coming in here. They have the league's leading receiver, Neil O'Connor. They have the preseason offensive player of the year, Trevor Knight at quarterback. He got hurt early on, so they kind of had the same situation we did. Their quarterback was out. Zach, our quarterback, was out. So they've had their struggles along the way. But they have had, I guess, the longest consecutive playoff appearance in the country at 14 years in a row.
It's an incredible run.
So that the next closest is North Dakota State, I believe, at 8 consecutive seasons in the playoffs. And out of those 8 they were in there, I think they won 6 of them. Wow. So New Hampshire's a winning culture. Sean's been there a long time. He does a phenomenal job. They're always going to be tough. They have skill. Like I said, I saw their record, and we haven't played them in, I think, 5 years.
Yeah, they haven't been to campus since 2010.
They have, yeah, so we haven't played them in a while. You know, nobody on our team, including our fifth-year seniors, has played against New Hampshire.
Yeah, the last game was in 13, so that's 5 years.
So in turn, none of their guys have played against us. So it'll be two programs, both called the Wildcats. We'll go out there and see what we can put on the field, you know. So we got to come out, and with the health that we have coming back, hopefully we can get back to what we were maybe in the first 4 games of the year versus the most recent 3 games of the year. So we're excited to get back out there. It's homecoming, so that's even more exciting. You heard Brian Finneran is going to be on campus with George Freiberger and a bunch of other guys. So we're expecting a great crowd. Everyone's looking at the weather right now. It's Tuesday. I don't look at the weather this early in the week. We'll worry about that on Saturday morning and go from there. But I don't even worry about the weather because I can't control it. So we'll go from there. But we're excited to get out there and hopefully put a great product on the field and hopefully be able to get back into winning ways.
Great, Coach. That'll wrap it up. I want to thank both, obviously, Brian Westbrook, who spent the whole hour with us here at the Green Turtle Sports Bar and Grill, Brian Finneran and Chris Long as well. So that wraps up Talking Villanova Football with head coach Mark Ferrante here from the Green Turtle Sports Bar and Grill in East Norton. Thanks to Joe Gaines, our studio engineer was Ryan Lennox. This Saturday, the Cats are up against the University of New Hampshire Wildcats. Game time is 2 o'clock. We'll be on the air with our pregame at 1:45. This is Steve Pannone. Have a great night. This is 610 ESPN.